Kyrgyzstan, Malaysia, managing editors, associate editors, chief educational research, and other members from 3 chapters. Before we begin on the program, we had asked you a question that do you know about journal club meeting? Out of which 73% people said we don't know, and only the rest of the remaining knew about it. So before we move on to the session, let me make it clear what journal club meeting is. Next slide. Okay, by journal we mean in academic publishing. It's a scientific journal. Is a periodic publication intended to further the progress of science, usually by reporting new research. And by club, we mean an association that is dedicated to a particular interest or activity. Meeting, we mean an assembly of people for a particular purpose, especially for formal discussion. Next slide. To summarize what journal club meeting is, it is an interactive discussion session on scientific research paper for those who are interested in research. The motto of journal club meeting is to help research enthusiasts to learn more about the basics of scientific papers and help discuss the steps as well as the methodologies on how to write a scientific paper. Because we have received so many answers on they want to publish the research paper, but they don't know how to start it. So this journal club is for all of those who want to just start writing their papers but don't know how to start it. So it's meant to be an active discussion. So I urge all of you to be actively participating in the discussion. You can not only ask the questions to the experts, but to the chat, like we discuss with the other members as well. Over to you, Avi.
Okay, so I cannot feel more privileged to the fact that not just that this is a journal club meeting, this is one of its kind, the first time that 3 different chapters are coming across. Kyrgyzstan, Malaysia, and India, which is a huge deal in itself. But to thank most for it is an overarching organization that joins all of us together, which is something called, a lot of you have heard about, the AMSA International. AMSA International is the umbrella under which different chapters have their own AMSA organizations. And I cannot be more pleased to welcome someone here who is the best person to tell you about it, the overall chairperson, Marjorie herself. I'm sure there are a lot of achievements on the paper that can be enumerated about her. But one thing that I want to tell to everyone over here, she's not just super efficient at her work, but the most approachable person that we have come across. She has managed to achieve so much in the past year, a year that was so challenging due to COVID for most people. And yet AMSA International succeeded in doing so much. So it's my absolute privilege to welcome Marjorie to introduce her about herself and about AMSA International. Over to you, Marjorie.
Well, thank you, Avi. Thank you for having me here. It's the first tri-national journal club meeting. Congratulations, everyone. So please allow me to share my screen. Okay. Is it visible? Okay.
Yes,
okay,
Marjorie, perfectly visible.
Thank you. So I believe that all of you already know about AMSA International, so I'm not going to go really in depth about this organization, but I would like to have a very cute Q&A session with all of you guys. So I will just swim across these slides real quick. Okay. So about us, as Avi has already really introduced us well. So we are a peak representative organization of medical students from across the Asia Pacific and beyond for all of you guys. Together, we share medical knowledge, like what we are having here, execute social initiatives, especially under our global health subsidiary, and forge international friendships, like what we are having here as well. So today we have 27 chapters under the organization, and as we always preach, and cultivate knowledge, action, and friendship. So our team, we have 19 of us in the senior management. We have 5 of us. I as the overall chairperson and 4 other friends here. I believe that you also know them well. And we have our internet department and Ocean here today joining you guys as the chief editor of our own journal. And next we have the intermediary department, 4 of us, 4 babies under me, and also 6 babies under the external department. So annual conferences are our annual flagship events. We have 2 each year. These are the objectives. I'm going really quick, guys. And the upcoming one is happening in July. It will be hosted by the UK, so I really look forward to seeing you guys. do take the opportunity to participate. It is a really fantastic conference, I can say. And the subsidiaries under the organization, first we have UMSEP. I believe all of you already know about UMSEP, our signature exchange program. We also have it with EMSA, European Medical Students Association, and the Federation of African Medical Students Association. The second one is academics. So this year we have started way more initiatives under this subsidiary with academic webinars, academic competitions, and having prestigious judges for all of our events under the academic subsidiaries. The next one is global health. It was used to be known as public health, and previously was LO to WHO, and over these years it has grown so much, and this year we have expanded it to global health with also a little tinge of public health at national level. So I really hope to see you guys participate in these initiatives as well. It is really hard to get involved in global health stuffs, and many of our syllabus, medical syllabus, do not include global health per se. So I really hope that whatever events that we have under this subsidiary, do take the opportunity to participate. It is free of charge anyway. And the next one is the purpose of why we are all here, the Journal of Asian Medical Students Association. Again, cheers to the committee members and all of you guys who are gathered here. Next is the e-newsletter. It is free of charge as well for publication. You can just submit your papers. All authors are welcome. It is free of charge. And we welcome all kinds of articles, all kinds of stories. So do take the opportunity, guys. And last but not least, our sister association, AMSA Alumni Club. It is directly under me as well. I liaise with them, with Dr. Davy here. And so if you have any seniors that are graduating soon, or seniors that have graduated and are keen to join the Alumni Club, feel free to contact them directly. I will definitely leave the email address after this at the chat section. And our partners, we have 3 medical students organizations, and EMSA, they are having their GA today, and their new board will be announced today, so we are looking forward as well. And our VOCE, Valia, is attending the GA at the moment. And we have 3 non-medical students organizations. We have 2 GO NGOs, and we have 5 partners, and they are growing. The list is growing this year rapidly. And if you are keen to build a partnership with them at national level, feel free to contact us. We'll be more than happy to connect you guys with them, because you guys deserve it. Okay, so that's the purpose of them being our partners as well. And so if you guys have any queries, feel free to write to our secretary. She's the official licensed person for our organization, or you can write directly to me as well. I'll be more than happy to connect with you guys. And we are at the moment, sorry, it's so dark in my room. Okay, we are at the moment recruiting senior officers. So feel free to submit your applications. I'll be more than happy to write recommendations for you guys. If you guys need it, just email me. I love writing, so don't feel shy. I mean, I believe that all of you guys are talented people, so don't underestimate yourself. If you guys feel that you have the capability, then feel free to submit your applications, contact your regional chairpersons to learn more about it. I think that's all, and I see many familiar names, so I think you guys have seen this presentation many times as well. So I'm open to questions if there are any questions from the floor. So maybe I'll pass it over to Avi. Thank you.
I don't have to tell it to anyone, but when Marjorie talks, she gets this charm on the face of everyone, because not just efficiency with which she's been working, and it's been just a year that we've known her, but I'm pretty sure that a lot of departments of AMSA and AMSA International, it's very tough to manage it all, but she's beautifully put it across for everyone that there are so many opportunities for everyone in every chapter to reach out, because as she said, those partners are exactly for you guys, for the students, right? And
Yes.
I Marjorie, that next year AMSA can only go forward with all your advice, and I'm sure the regional chairpersons are going to help as much in integrating the chapter AMSA organizations and AMSA International. Thank you once again, and I would like to pass it over to Asma to facilitate you.
Okay, so
Thank
we
you,
will like
Abby.
participants, if they are having any questions, the floor is open for them. You can have the questions. So you can either use the Zoom chat feature to write down the questions, or you can raise hand to verbalize your question. Let's wait for 1 or 2 minutes and then we will move to the session.
Yes, don't feel shy, guys. I would like to hear your beautiful voices. I see Rahul here as well. Hi, Rahul.
Hello, how are you?
I'm fine. Long time no see. Okay, any questions from the floor? If you guys want to ask about our generation, I'm happy to answer questions for them as well. So in a few months, I will be retiring and I will be in the advisory board instead. Any questions from the floor?
So I think Marjorie had made it pretty clear and there are no questions remaining there for participants. Okay, yeah, I think we got one question. Should I read it out for you? Is getting indulged in these activities a very hectic work? It's, I think, a more personal question where you can give your opinions, being a medical student.
Okay, thank you, Aman Praveen. This is a quite difficult question. It depends on you. If you have the passion, if you love your work, then I don't think that it will be a burden in a way. It won't. It is hectic, definitely. You have to make sacrifices. Um, yeah, you have to make sacrifices, and I think that it is manageable because I'm not going to lie. When you're at a position like me, you will have that pressure pushing you. I think it's a positive pressure with members pushing you, and then after that, university levels, and then national levels, and then you there at the international level. Because if you delay at any point of time, then you know that people will be waiting for you. You know that you are causing a whole procrastination and a whole delay to the whole process in the whole organization. So um, I think it's manageable because as long as you do your things quickly, then it's okay. Yeah, so I will just, yes.
Yes, there is one more question. Like being a new member without much experience, how can we get involved with the association that works?
Okay, thank you for that question. Definitely, I would encourage you to take part at local events, local levels, and local hostings. Then proceed with trying out for national levels and also international levels. I myself started like that as well. I started with AMSEP, and that's why I became the international director of AMSEP last 10 year, and now I'm the overall chairperson. So it I would definitely encourage you to because at international level you don't host a lot of events but it's more of management. So if you have knowledge of policies, if you have knowledge of organizational affairs, then it will definitely help you with your career in this international tier now where I am in. Okay, so I
One
think I would
more, how is the
yes.
process of applying for the student exchange program? Like when and how does it go?
Okay, thank you, Atharva. It is very local. You have to ask your local management of how they recruit and select the delegates. I think Rahul can answer this question because Rahul was involved in AMSEP India. So Rahul, do you want to answer?
Yes, sure.
Mm-hmm.
So the process for applying for a student exchange program is that your local national DOAMZEP will open up calls and will send out messages on any social media platform that you all have in your country. And after that is done, you can apply. So each country has a different process of application. Like if you ask in India, you have to fill up a form, you have to answer some motivational questions. Depending on your AMSA activities, whether you've participated very well, you could upload all of those certificates and make sure that you give a very good application. And then the National DOAMZEP with their team will have a selection committee for that. And they will then choose you for the for the exchange. So I wish you all the best if you would like to apply for one. So you can always contact your national DOAMZEP or any team member for more information.
I,
Thank you.
Rahul, a lot of Indians have queries regarding that, so we can definitely plan an AMSEP session by Priyati and you in the coming year, and we can invite Marjorie as a special guest because I'm sure AMSEP is very close.
Yes, sure. If you guys don't mind me, old lady there, then I'm more than happy to accept the invitation.
We would love to.
Okay.
So very clearly, Marjorie, you have a lot of fans in India who would love to ask you a lot of questions. But over to you, Asma. You can proceed ahead.
Okay, thank you, participants, for your questions, and thank you, Marjorie and Rahul, for answering them. Now, I would like to produce a note of thanks to Marjorie for taking out her time out of her busy schedule to join us today, and have appreciated to be moderating her. So, to proceed, I would like to present the certificate of appreciation for Marjorie, and I would request Avi to take the pictures around. So Anne, you can just count down so that we can take the pictures and move towards the next session.
Mansama, can you also take a simultaneous screenshot so that we have a double copy?
So do the countdown so that the pictures can get right. Okay, so should I count down? 3, 2, 1. I think it's done.
Thank you so much for having me. All the best, guys.
Thank you so much again for joining us today. It was a privilege to have you here. Thank you.
Thank you, Asma. Thank you.
Okay, so with this, we will move towards our next part of this session. So we had asked you a question that do you know about JAMSA, and out of which 65% people said that they don't know about JAMSA and 35% said yes. And when we asked them what JAMSA is, we got varied answers like it's a research wing, it's something. So to make you all guys clear about what Journal of AMSA is, we have a best person who can introduce us to the Journal of AMSA and give us a bird's-view overlook about the working and handling of JAMSA and how you can submit your articles through JAMSA. So I feel more than privileged to introduce you to our Chief Editor of Journal of AMSA, Oshin Puri. He will be presenting the introductory speech on the Journal of AMSA. So I let it over to you, Oshin.
Thank you for the introduction, Asma. So, good evening, everyone from different time zones. Myself, Oshin Puri, the current Chief Editor of the Journal of Asian Medical Students Association at AMSA International for 2020-2021. I am also currently holding position as the Assistant Vice Overall Chairperson Internal at AMSA India. I am here to talk to you all about JAMSA, and I am more than happy to listen that 35% of the participants who are here know about JAMSA, and I'm sure by the time we end this session, there would be many more people out of the 65% who would know about JAMSA. So for today's session, I'm prepared both ways. Either you can have me present some introduction about JAMSA and introduce you to JAMSA's current board, or we can keep it more interactive where we can talk to each other, you can ask me questions, I can answer questions, and a little bit more talking about research, about publications, about how to go about undergraduate research, how to do research if you don't have a lot of support from your institute or a lot of support from your, means a lot of resources available. So let's start this interactively by having everyone type down in the chat box what type of session would you want. Do you want me to present some slides and then move on to Q&A, or do you want me to have a talk with you regarding what JAMSA does and how can you get involved in JAMSA, how can you get involved in research per se?
So waiting for our participants to have what kind of session do you want? Please let us know in the comments. Okay. So more of them are wanting to have an interactive open discussion. Okay.
I think the answer is pretty clear, Ocean.
Okay, so I think we'll go forward with an interactive session. So Asma, can you just help me by stop sharing screen so that I can see the participants I'm talking to and answer their queries?
Yeah,
And have a
sure.
little chit chat about JAMSA with them.
All right.
Okay, Asma, can you just stop screen sharing?
Yes, Anne is just about to do. Anne is sharing the screen.
Okay. So would you want to ask questions or should I directly answer them from the chat box?
It's okay if you want to do it. It would be better for them. Bit more interactive.
Okay, so I'll just take the name of the person and I would suggest you guys verbalize your question so that I can understand it better. So our first question is from Dia. So Dia, what do you want to ask? Verbalize your question so that we can have a talk. Dia. Okay, I'll answer questions that are asked to me. I'll not read and answer the question because you have chosen an interactive session. So by the time Dia comes back, we'll move on to Rahul's question. Rahul Sharma, would you want to verbalize your question?
Hello, good evening, Mr. Ocean. So I
Yeah, good
was
evening,
just
Rahul.
so I was just asking that how does JAMSA support students, or what measures does it take, or how it functions so that students which are present in medical colleges, especially in the beginning years, they can produce and publish their research and take the research forward.
Okay, Rahul. So this is a very good question. This gives me an opportunity to tell you guys about JAMSA as a whole. So JAMSA, although it is named as the Journal of Asian Medical Students Association, it is not just a journal, but a full-fledged subsidiary which caters to they take care of running our journal proper, under which we publish articles such as letter to the editor, case reports, commentaries, perspectives, which actually don't need excessive amount of experience and can be a good starter pack for a new student to learn research. And then also systematic reviews, meta-analysis, and original articles. Apart from that, we have a management board which is led by the managing editors, the executives, and the chapter representatives. So we have activities at different levels that can introduce you to research, research methodology, research writing, and how to write an article that gets into a journal easily. For example, recently on 4th April, we had our workshop on publication hacks where we discussed about some key points which you should keep in mind whenever you prepare an article. And all of our associate editors gave wonderful tips. We had interactive small group discussions. You have not missed this opportunity. The recording is still there on JAMSA's Facebook page. You can have a look. Through such sessions, you get to learn about the initial articles, for example, a case report or a perspective or a commentary, where you start reading literature and putting them down in scientific verbatim. Once you start getting a hold of them, then you can begin with research. And to have an even more in-depth knowledge, we have National Journal Club meetings, for example, this one, where we get to study one paper in detail and discuss how did a researcher come up with a methodology and find out results from these papers or his data. So there are activities at different levels where you can get involved. Most of them are open for all and don't have a small or a selected number of people participating, but as many people as they want. So you can always stay tuned by contacting your regional chairperson or the chapter representatives and on JAMSA's social media handles to know what all research initiatives are being introduced. I hope I could answer your question judiciously, Rahul.
Yes, of course. Thank you, Ocean.
Most welcome. So is Dia back?
So we have another question from Pratik. Till then, the is back. For publishing a research, how do you verify its credibility?
Okay, so I'll just Pratik, can you just turn on your mic? I'll just want to clarify the question.
Yeah, hi Ocean. Am I audible?
Yeah,
I
you're
hope I
audible,
am.
Pratik.
All right. Yeah. So like basically for publishing a research in normal like other journals, they have a very strict verification process and how the research was conducted and like all of that. So like how does JAMSA just verify and make sure that the research has been conducted properly and everything?
Yeah, so Pratik, JAMSA's editorial board, that is the associate editors and the editors, are all people who are quite experienced in research, because whenever JAMSA recruits its editorial board, there are certain eligibility criteria. Two of our associate editors have joined us today, Charles and um, Fazil, both of them having exceptional research experience. So whenever an article is submitted, first of all, they screen through the article that it addresses all important points. For example, there is no major methodological weakness or there is no ethical concerns related to that paper. It has a proper structure, it has a proper scientific verbatim, it has proper references. After which it goes into a double-blind peer review, where reviewers from all over Asia would be sent your manuscript without your details. So you won't come to know who is reviewing your manuscript. The reviewer won't come to know whose manuscript is this. Then they would give their opinions on the manuscript in terms of the expertise in that field, whether your paper is adding something new to the field or is it coming out with new conclusions or not. According to that, we come to a final decision, like the associate editors, the editor, and me. We discuss and come to a final decision whether the article should be or should not be published in JAMSA's upcoming edition. Now, usually the high-end journals which charge quite a lot of publication fee and have very strict rules uh, become very, very inaccessible to students. On the contrary, if you ask me about JAMSA, we do have strict policies about what we are publishing. Things that don't match our scope, things that don't match our interests are not published. But the only thing here is your article is never rejected bluntly. We usually tend to ask the authors to resubmit the article, answering all the concerns which have been raised by the reviewer. This way, the student doesn't feel demotivated but gets a chance to learn and then resubmit, and then the article again undergoes a review process. And for if you ask me, the acceptance rate for JAMSA very high. But then if you are motivated enough, we'll help you improve your article to such an extent that it gets published. And obviously, we don't charge any publication fee to make it more accessible to students. I hope I could answer your question, Pratik.
Asma, can we take one more question?
Okay, yes. So there is a question from Onam. Do case reports require approval from the Institute Ethics Committee?
Okay, so for case reports, it is sort of a different thing. Case reports don't directly require ethical committee approval, but it should have the consent of the patient. He should be aware that it is being published on an academic platform. Then the treating physician of the patient should also be involved in the case report and should know that you are studying the case or you want to publish the case, and you should have his permission, his rights along with it, because the treating physician and the patient are the people who have the right over the data of that patient. Usually there is a tendency to also inform the head of the department to which the patient was admitted. So yeah, basically they are more of permissions rather than ethical concerns. I hope I could answer the question.
One more question from Smith Ram. If a survey on a particular topic of research matter is to be done on a mass level, will JAMSA help in spreading that survey intentionally?
Asma, sorry, I couldn't get you due to some network issue I'm having.
All right,
Could you please repeat?
I'll do it again. If a survey on a particular topic of research matter is to be done on a mass level, will the JAMSA help in spreading the survey intercontinentally?
Okay, so very, very interesting question. So can I know whose question is this?
Yeah, Sumitram,
It's Smith Ram.
can you please come over so that it's an interactive session? You can ask question yourself.
Sumitra, can I see you?
Yes,
Hi,
Sumitra,
Sumitra.
please feel free to unmute yourself.
So I'll just highlight one important point here. Whenever you do a research, you have to define 4 things related to that research. The first of these 4 is the population. Okay, so population means who are the people you are doing the study on, right? So if you are doing a study in India, okay, supposedly a survey that, you know, um, are concerning that how do medical students of India tackle their exams, or means anything, the stress during the exam season. Okay, so at that point, your survey should be limited to students of India, because the population you have selected is students of India. And if in terms of willing to get more and more responses, if you would have people from, say, Malaysia, people from Indonesia answering the survey, they should actually be excluded, because their study environment and our study environment would be different. So whenever you do any survey, do keep in mind to define the population very clearly. Anyone or everyone cannot and should not be involved in a survey, because different age groups have different, um, you know, different comorbidities or different confounding factors. And this also brings me to an important point that, whenever an original article is published, the number of responses are not that important as much as the methodological clarification is. For instance, if I have, say, 2,000 people filling my survey, and the age group is from 0 to, say, 100. So I'm not getting a particular idea. For example, I'm taking study stress and I'm getting it filled by everyone from 0 to 100. So the people who have already cleared all of their exams, they would basically be confounders in my data. Okay, so if I get it filled by 400 students rather than 2,000 people from all age groups, it will make much more impact, and the study will be much more impactful. So you should define your population clearly. Should you decide to do a study at the level of Asia, having different countries involved, that is something that is currently under progress in AMSA International, where we would be coming up with a collaborative research department very soon, may not be by the end of this tenure, so by the starting of the next tenure, where you can send in your proposals, and on discretion of the department head, it would be spread to members of AMSA International, or it would be sent back for revisions. I hope I could answer your question, Sumitra.
Thank you, Ocean. Asma, you can take over.
Yes. So there are still questions in the chat box, but I can read them, but I am making sure that these questions are going to be solved, like getting answered in the upcoming sessions. And we had also some questions from other participants that in the forums as well. So out of which I want to ask Ushin about one question, that there was one question. Can we publish the same research article in more than one journal? And also, does citation determine the value of an article after it gets published?
For the first question, no. If you even mistakenly think of that, you are basically doing a publication misconduct, and you end up, not following. Am I audible?
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah. So if you plan to do something of this sort ever, it is known as plagiarism. Say even your article you're publishing at 2 places, it also counts as plagiarism, and it is a scientific misconduct. And there are, if you do this with a strong database journal, for example, Lancet, which has many subjournals, they can blacklist you from their databases and spread it across other journals, making you ineligible to publish at several places. So never even try. In fact, I'll tell you, forget about publishing at 2 places. You should never submit your article to 2 journals simultaneously, because that also counts as a publication misconduct. For the second question, Asma, can you just repeat it?
Yes. Does citation determine the value of an article after it gets published?
Very, 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 very good question asked by whosoever asked it. So citations are actually one of the top markers of the research, being the value of the research, because the citations determine that how many researchers in that field are actually relying on the results of the study. So even if your article is not into a very high impact factor, a very high indexed journal, if it is getting good number of citations, it holds a lot of value. And for since I'm from India, I will tell you a small story that in India, usually people tend to go behind the number of publications you have. But mind me, if you have 50 publications and 100 citations on it, you are not a top-notch researcher. But if you have 20 research papers and have 1,000 citations on it, you are actually someone, a hotshot researcher who does exceptional work. So yes, citations are one of the most important criteria to determine the reliability and quality of a research. I hope I could answer that question.
Thank you so much for all these questions and answers. So the questions that are remaining, I'm making sure that these questions are going to be answered in the upcoming session. So I would like to thank you, Ocean, for just taking time out of his busy schedule and getting answered these questions. And no doubt, you can email the questions to the Ocean as well. He can get them answered anytime. And stay tuned to the JAMSA's websites to get these answers. So we will just proceed with this session. Like we want to provide a note of thanks to the Oshin for taking time and present the certificate of appreciation. Meanwhile, I would like to request Anne to take the pictures.
Thank you, Asma. And before we go ahead with the photograph, my email IDs means the email ID of the chief editor of JAMSA are j-amsa@amsa-international.org or chief.editor@j-amsa-international.org. I would share both of these email IDs with all of you in the chat box. You can send me over your questions. I'll be happy to answer them. And even you can contact me through WhatsApp. If you have any queries, I'll be more than happy to help you all and answer your queries.
Okay,
Thank you, Asma.
Before you could take a leave, I would like to present you the certificate of appreciation and meanwhile take the picture.
Sure.
So
thank you, Avi, for this, for taking time. And this is, so I would like Mansimo to take the pictures in the meanwhile.
Yeah. So 3, 2, 1, and done.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mansimo, and thank you so much, Oshin, for joining us today. Over to you, Avi.
Okay, so I think we've made a beautiful point in answering a lot of important questions for a lot of people. Thank you for that, Ocean. But moving on to the main session for the most people that have joined us today is also understanding what basically a JCM is. So the core of it is the presentation. But before that, I would really take this time to welcome two of our experts who will be critically analyzing the research presentation, who are Dr. Shiv Joshi and Dr. Tuti Irani. Welcome to the Journal Club meeting, sir and ma'am. And once the presentation is done, we would love to hear what questions and what critical analysis you have. And moving on to the question that everyone has right now, how do you write a research paper? What all goes into a research paper writing? To introduce you to how, what, and why of research paper writing, I'd like you to introduce you to the associate editor of JAMSA, Fazil Qureshi, who will give you a brief overview how to start writing one. And before that, can we move on to the introduction for Fazil and? Do we have it? Yeah. So let me just take this moment to tell you all about this amazing medical student and a great human being. Fazil is a final year medical student in Ziauddin University, Karachi, one of the few students around the world who have been awarded Walton Sustainability Solution Awards by Arizona State University for his work in creation, design, and development of innovative solutions. He was declared as the grand winner of 2014 Intel Sindh Science Fair won the Best of Category Award, Best Paper, and many other awards for his contribution towards medical science research and other universities. So that's just a quick overview of all the things that we could not enumerate for Fazil. He has more than 20 research papers related to public health, psychiatry, oncology, and molecular biology. One very important thing I want to tell besides these accolades is that it's not necessary to be very long in this field. Fazal is as much a medical student and he's done so much. And where and in whatever part of the world we are, it cannot stop us from achieving all these accolades in different continents of the world. So I think it's enough of me saying, can we please give it over to Fazal? Over to you. Asma, can you just check on Fazal if his audio is on?
Sure.
Asma, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you so much, Abhi, for this wonderful introduction. And I'm just a medical student. These are the side thing that goes on with life. So just thank you so much for the opportunity to present here. And I hope the next 25, 30 minutes would be really enjoying and good for everyone here. So without further ado, let's start with it. The format of my presentation would be, I will be explaining my research paper, which all of you have been forwarded, like the title that is shown as Comparative Cross-Sectional Analysis on the Prevalence of Depression and Associated Risk Factors Among the Medical Students and Doctor of Karachi, Pakistan. I would like to thank my teammate Danish, Dr. Sara, Zain Javed, Ujala, Jyoti, Nakita, Fahad, and Aisha. Without them, this article won't be here. I won't be here presenting with you. And first, let's start with the question why I choose this topic and why I decided to conduct a research on it. So a few years back, like 2 or 3 years back, when I was in like second or third year of med school, there was I'm very fond of reading newspapers. So every day in the newspaper, I get to read like new newspaper, like a medical student conducted a suicide, a doctor conducted a suicide. Can you move one slide forward? So these are few of the headlines 2 or 3 years ago, which were in every newspaper, like Lum's student took his life due to family pressure due to medical studies, say police, female doctor shoots herself in Karachi, psychiatrist killed himself and his daughter, student dies after falling from university building in Islamabad. And these are the news that kept me like, I am becoming a medical doctor and why it's happening with me, why it's happening with everyone around us, why people are killing themselves. Like when I joined medicine in like first year, I was very enthusiastic and I was like, okay, it's a very nice field. I will be saving humanity and all that stuff. Like at which point it went in that way that people felt like they need to kill themselves. So that was the main motivation with me to start this research, to know what are the root causes about it and what we can do about it. So before starting this research, I know that I was just a simple medical student in the second year of med school. And whatever I will be publishing, it won't be that much impactful, but it can be a start to something. So never stop yourself thinking like, oh my God, this is a big task, I can't do it. At least start. There is always a starting point and then you can build on it. This research article is a part one of my 3 papers that I published on the same issue. This one is the comparison between the doctors and the student. The next one is specifically for the student, focusing more on their problems, and the other one is on the doctors. So this was the main motivation behind me to why to do this research and why to come in the field of psychiatry. My basic interest in medicine lies in radiology and oncology, but psychiatry interests me from like a very beginning of my med school. So this was an important issue that it the potential in me to do this research. So moving towards the next slide. So starting with the introduction. So in my slides, I will be telling you about introduction for my research. Then I will be giving you a perfect recipe to how to write an introduction for your research. And if you will be having any question, you can tell me. And if I'm going really fast, we can also like in the chat box. I'm not used to the webinar and all that thing. So usually I go really fast in that and people don't understand it. So you can just hit me and I will just tell you. So what is depression? Basically, starting with the basic definition. According to WHO, Depression is a mood disorder characterized by loss of interest in daily life activities, feeling of hopelessness, helplessness, decreased appetite, anger, and irritability. And what are the basic risk factors that can lead to depression? They are such as academic demands, exam, instability to cope, helplessness, increased psychological pressure, mental tension, and high workload. And according to the article published in Nature by 2021, that is this year, depression will be the one of the most leading cause of disability. And being in a profession, being in a medical profession, our life is already so stressful. So it's really important to know what are the basic and what are the potential risk factors. In order to assess the severity of the problem, I would like to move towards the prevalence of depression to give you an overall idea like how prevalent this condition is and what we need to do it. Next slide. So moving towards the global prevalence, around 3.2% of the world population is suffering from depression. Moving towards a college student, out of 3.2%, 33% of them are the college student. Moving towards the medical college student, 27 to 50% of the medical college students are suffering from some degree of depression. And while moving towards the doctor, around the globe, 10 to 15% of the doctor are suffering from depression. While moving towards the specific population I choose for my research, that is Pakistan and Karachi. So overall prevalence of anxiety and depression in Karachi, in Pakistan was 34%. Moving towards the medical student, it was 44%. And moving towards the Karachi medical student, it was 60 to 70%. And these stats are from the research that was conducted in 2008. After that, none of the research had been conducted on this specific topic, in which way we are comparing the depression level among the students and the doctors. And while moving towards the doctors of Karachi, around 25 to 30% of the doctors are suffering from depression. When we compare these stats with the global stats, we see that it is one of the serious issue in my part of the world. And when I compare these stats with the stats of South Asia and overall Asia, these stats resemble the stats from different countries, including India, Bangladesh, Indonesia, and a lot of other Asian countries. So this just signifies that this is an important issue and important problem to work on, and it does tell us about the burden of the disease. Moving towards the next slide. So according to the National Institute of Mental Health, around 14.4 million of adult population are annually diagnosed as depressed because of occupational stress. Doctors are more vulnerable to develop depressive symptoms because of excessive emotional stress of emergency management, critical decision making, debt declaring, demanding patients, workload, duty hours, night shifts, unintentional medical mistakes, and lack of sleep. Of all of these symptoms, I can assure like most of us have like felt some of them. Like I am in my final year of med school, I will be graduating in few months, and still the most frightening part for me is debt declaring. Like how would I don't have the guts to like declare someone's loved one like, okay, we can't have it. So it's a really stressful condition when even I think about it as a student, when I don't even have to do it. The major risk factors among the medical student include the steady load, inability to cope up with the demands, stress, anxiety, lack of psychological support, and these can influence negatively, resulting in cognitive and learning impairment. These symptoms all of us know better than anyone else. Med school is tough, but it's fun. Moving towards the next slide. So the the gap in the knowledge was the basic reason and the gap in the knowledge why I conducted this research was that none of the study have been done in the South Asia to highlight these two vulnerable groups, and suicide rate is continuously increasing in these groups. The objectives of the current study are to compare the prevalence of depression among the medical students and doctors working in hospitals and its correlation with the demographic variables, associated symptoms, and history of any recent trauma. So moving towards the next slide, here I finished my introduction of my article. So this is a perfect recipe if you want to write an introduction. So what are the basic components of introduction and how you should write it? So it is the most important part, and it will convince the reader to read your article. Typically 3 pages and typically 3 paragraphs, sorry, and should be in the flow maximum 500 to 1000 words and maximum 12 references and minimum 12 references and maximum 20 to 25 references. The more the merrier. but it also depends on the which journal you are trying to publish it. Some journals don't have like the reference limit, but some of them literally have like you need to have like 30 references overall in the article. So you need to plan your article according to that. So in the first paragraph, we just give the background and the prevalence. The prevalence we should be giving in order to give a global picture of it. We should be starting prevalence with the world prevalence, then moving towards the specific continent, then to the region, then to the country, and then to the specific city where our sample population is. In the second paragraph, we tell what is known, like previous researches on the topic, but very precisely. Where is the gap in the knowledge and the rationale? Justify the importance and what of the work you are doing. While moving towards the third paragraph, we give them the primary objective, that is the main objective of the research, why we are doing it, and the secondary objective are the objective. When you have done the research, when you have taken out the results, sometimes there are findings which we are not expecting. We get some really good finding other than what we plan to do the research. So those are known as secondary objective, and we also mention them in the introduction. It is not necessary to write like 3 paragraphs. You can write in like 4 or 5 paragraphs, but it is like most of the journal follow this pattern. So I have prepared like a recipe according to like most of the journal, but you can alter it according to yourself. So up till now, for the introduction, do we have any question or queries? You can write in the chat box. Okay, so far I haven't received any. I will go with the Q&A at the end. So moving towards the methodology. Methodology is one of the important part of your research, which determines the what of the research and which helps the journal to evaluate your manuscript. Like whether this is the original research or whether it's a copy of someone or whether this research have been done or not, or it's just a fake paper. So it's really important, and in depth you need to understand, and you need to know everything about it if anyone asks you any question for it. Moving towards the next slide. So I have prepared my methodology in just one slide in the form of a table. Next slide. Oh, yeah, this is. So the study design which I chose for my study was descriptive cross-sectional study. So cross-sectional study is also known as snapshot study design, in which we just take for example, we just take a picture of a population at a time and we analyze on the basis of that picture. We don't have any follow-ups. We don't have any backup question for that. So being a medical student with the university and all that hectic routine and schedule, I chose the cross-sectional study design because it was most feasible for me and also most feasible for this study design according to my literature search. Moving towards the sample size. So it was calculated to be 384 at the 95% confidence interval. That means there was 5% margin of error. So whatever the results are in my research, there are still 5% chances of error that they may be wrong. Now, it is universally it is taking as 95% CI confidence interval, but you can also take it to 99. It can never be 100, but if you take it to 99, you have to increase the sample size to like in thousands. So it's like very difficult at that stage. So being a start of my career, so I just choose at the 95% confidence interval, and universally it is used as 95. 99 is used in like really when you are doing some scientific research, lab-based work. The study duration for my research I conducted in 1 year, that started from January 2019 to December 2019. Sampling technique, it was multi-stage non-probability technique. So in this, the first stage depends. In the first stage, we plan our inclusion and the exclusion criteria. In the second stage, we choose our study population. So I have 2 study population, medical students and doctor. So for medical student, I have to analyze like how many universities are in my city, Karachi, and have to plan like which university I'm going to take in my study, and then I have to decide what are the hospitals available in my city and how many hospitals I'm going to take it. So in the first stage, I just selected the medical universities. In the second stage, I selected the university hospitals, and in the third stage, I determined my inclusion and exclusion criteria. Study tool, that is one of the most important factors that can either make your research or it can break your research. So I use PHQ-9, that is a public health questionnaire 9. That is a globally recognized question formed by Levy Bound, and there are many questions available for depression, but it was whenever you're choosing a study design, you have to keep in the mind your sample population. Like I know I have my sample population of medical students and doctor. They don't have that much time. If I give them like a 20-page questionnaire, they won't fill it. So you have to keep in mind the PHQ-9 only consists of 9 questions. It have like sensitivity of 86% and specificity of 92%. So that's a really good stats for a questionnaire to, and it can be self-administered. So I use PHQ-9 with slide addition regarding the demographic info, regarding the possible coping mechanism and risk factor for depression. These other extra questions were added according to the literature review, which I did, and I choose like, okay, these factors are common in all these researches. So I should just include in my research and see how it's affecting my population. And after adding these, this study tool was tested on a sample of 20 people, and their convex alpha value that is was taken out, and it was found to be 0.888. So basically, what is convex alpha? Convex alpha is a test of sensitivity of the questionnaire. So it tell you how strong your questions are interrelated and how well they are how well they give a complete picture of your study design or the study question. So this test helps us to determine whether a questionnaire is reliable or not. Any value above 0.7 is considered as reliable. So whenever anyone is doing research, I will always recommend to do it on a sample of 20 to 30 people, then apply this test and check like which like convex alpha also give us opportunity to like differentiate like which question is the weakest and which question is the strongest. So which question we should replace and how we should go about it. So inclusion criteria include the MBBS students and doctors from 3 government and 3 private universities. And the exclusion criteria was student and medical professionals of BDS and pharmacy and all the other all the other field other than MBBS. I choose this because I need like a specific info about this specific group of MBBS student and doctor, because both of them have like similar schedules, and I want like to be bias-free research, error-free research. If I start including the student of the BDS and the pharmacy or physiotherapy, then they have their different schedules, their different study patterns and all that stuff. So it can like alter the data of my alter the results, and that can result into the bias. So I want to create an error-free research design, so that's why I excluded them. But my future plans include to do like specific research on these fields and then compare like how and where there's difference and which points are better and which points need to be worked on. Moving towards the next slide. So this is the perfect recipe if you want to write a methodology. It should be very precise and to the point according to the ethical consideration. So it should always have a study location, study time period, study type, sample population, inclusion criteria, exclusion criteria, sample size, how bias have been reduced like I told you, and type of sampling, important details of the questionnaire, and definition of the important variables. Along with this, you also need to add like an ethical statement because the research which was taken before starting this research, it was including the data from the humans. So I need to get it approved by an ethical review committee of my university. And you also need to put the ethical review committee reference number in order to validate. And sometimes the journal also need to submit the copy of the certificate when you are trying to publish it. Moving towards the next slide. So moving towards the results, next slide. Starting with the basic results, about 450 questionnaires were distributed in different public and private sector medical universities, and 400 of them were completely filled, and they were used for the data analysis. So the response rate which was calculated was 88%. The mean age of the students were 21 years with a standard deviation of 1.8 years, while the doctor's mean age was 31 years with a standard deviation of 7.8 years. Female comprises 33% of the sample population, while 67% of the sample population were male. Relationship status of the 70% of the participants was single, followed by married, that was 18%, committed 11%, and divorce was 1%. Most common ethnicity was Urdu speaking, 38%, followed by Sindhi, Punjabi, Pathan, Balochi, and the population belonging to other ethnicities. So the thing which I have explained here, These are known as demographic variables. I have given you the complete picture of like what was the common age, what was the relationship, what was the ethnicity, and what are the like basic demographics of my study. Moving towards the next slide. So we have here table 1. So table 1, in the table 1, we have seen the association of the sector and the depression score with demographic variables. The variables which I have shown you, I have compared them with the depression score and see if I find any significance. So the sector here means the sector 1 is doctor, while the sector 2 is students. So whenever I say sector, I mean doctors and students. So when we see here the p-value, the p-value, those p-value who are bold, they show the significance. So there was a very significant association of the sector and the age. And the interesting part was, as comparison to the doctor, the lower the age of the student, the more depression score he was getting. And the more the age of the doctor, the more depression score it was getting. So we have depression, we have extreme depression at the both ends of the age. While moving towards the next significant value, that was depression score and gender, it was found that in students and doctors, depression was more prevalent among males as compared to females. All the points which I'm saying, we were going to discuss it in the discussion. I'm just telling you what are the results right now. We are not discussing why they are and how could they be or what can be the error or not. Next slide. So when we compare the depression score among the students and the doctor, it was found that the depression score among the student were more as compared to the doctor. Both of them high depression score, but as a comparison, students have more depression score as compared to the doctor. So here this graph that shows the PHQ-9 distributes the depression according in 5 different categories according to scores given by 9 questions. So it is minimal depression, mild depression, moderate depression, moderately severe depression, severe depression, and then there is no depression. So we can see the green column that shows the no depression. As in doctors, it is much higher as compared to the student, and the sample was equally divided. Like we have 200 students, we have 200 doctors in order to minimize the bias. Move towards the next slide. So here is the second MANOVA. The test which was applied on the previous in this table is known as MANOVA, that is multivariate analysis of variance, in which we take multiple variants. And here in this weekend, I have compared the depressive symptoms with the sector. These symptoms were taken from the previous researches that have been published, and they were included as an option in our research questionnaire. So this the depression score was most common in like doctor and student, but it was more in student as compared to the doctors. And moving towards the most common symptom that shows significant figure was hopelessness and the sleep changes. These were the 2 most common symptoms that show significance with a higher depression score. Moving towards the next slide. So here we see what are the symptoms in the medical student and doctor and where we differentiate between the symptoms. So the most common symptom among both of the group was sleep changes, and the least common symptom among the students, that is the blue line, was concentration problem, while the least common in doctor were the weight and appetite changes. So here we get an overall picture like which of the symptoms is more common in our population. As we go in the discussion, I will tell you the comparison with the other population. So right now we got to know like the sleep changes and hopelessness are the 2 most common symptoms. The least common symptom in the student is concentration problem, and the least common in doctors is the weight and appetite changes. Moving towards the next slide. So then we ask about the history of recent trauma, because it can affect the depression score to a great extent. So we asked like the 5 basic categories of the trauma, and that included the death of the family member, death of the friend or a pet, harassment, social embarrassment, and failure to solve the problem. So out of all of these, when we applied chi-square among the students and these symptoms, among the student and the symptoms, we find out that the most common symptom in the most common trauma in students were the failure to solve the problem, while as comparison to the doctors, the most common was harassment. Moving towards the next slide. It was also found that the 26% of the students were having suicidal thoughts, while only the 16% of the doctor were having suicidal intention. That is a very great number. That is a very red flag as comparison to the suicide rate compared to the other regions. So we'll be discussing on that on further. Moving towards the next slide. So here's a basic recipe how to write the results. It should be consist of figure, tables, and chart, which should stand alone and should not need any like words to define it. Use minimum figures, table, and chart. Precise values should be given. Same data should not be presented in figures, chart, and table. There should not be replication of the data. All do not draw conclusion. Just be precise. You should also give like specific tests and what are the p-value for this specificity, like at what p-value they are significant and not significant. Use short form and give full form in the subscript. Summarize the data point relationship. Describe the big picture trends and avoid using the same numbers and data in the tables and chart. Use the past tense for completed action and present tense for the assertion that continue to be true. And the significant words should only be used if p-value is given. Moving towards my discussion, we can move forward. Next. So the point which was significant in the result, we will be discussing them in the discussion. I'll be discussing few of them. Like you all have the link to the access to my paper. You can always read upon it. It have my email address. You have any question, you can always ask me over there. So the student shows the higher percentage of depression than doctors, as current study reported that around 41% of the medical students were mildly depressed. Similar trends were observed in the other study around the globe. For example, a study in Cape Town and the other study which was done in Middle East showed the similar trends. And moving towards in the current setup, 32% of the doctor shows mild depression. A cross-sectional study in Austria showed that 10.3% of the physicians suffer from some level of depression and major depression disorder. The number is lower than the current results, so depression may be a bigger issue in our setup. More importantly, the trend shows that the physician can also be depressed, but they are less depressed as compared to the medical student. Next slide. So the certain lifestyle practices and risk factor seems to be similar contributors to the depression in both student and physician. One main factor was sleep that was considered very high statistical in current study. A study by Wang et al. Stated that disruption in the continuity of the REM sleep correlates with the episode of depression in people. Similarly, another study by Zahe et al. Shows that the short sleep duration have significant association with depression. So it was most common in student and doctor, and as we all know, we all are sleep deprived up to some extent, and doctors are more as compared to student. So these findings supports a correlation of the sleep of depression. A major difference in the both population of our setup is that medical students seem to have hard time concentrating when depressed, whereas the physicians seem to have appetite changes when they are depressed. The decrease in concentration could be contributed by lack of sleep and attention. So we can assume that the lack of sleep is a contributor is in contribution to the concentration of depression. Doctor may not have this problem because they have more experience than student. A study states that the experience can have profound effect on the learning and consolidated memories. So in other words, the past experience allows doctors to stay more focused because they are very well versed in the field. So it's just like when you are doing something, the more you do it, the more better you get on it. Moving towards the next slide. So the certain events of the recent trauma also seems to have shown the similar trends between the medical student and physician were assessed through the multiple questions. So one of these events is failure to solve the problem. In the current setup, this was the factor for 29.5% of the physicians and 30.5% of the medical student. According to the Keynes and Well, depression was associated with rejection and social problem solving. It cannot be pinpointed like what kind of the problem physician or medical student struggle to resolve. The study indicates that the medical student and physician could be having hard time dealing with the social problem because it was only one question. Like this research and this point have given me an opportunity to conduct research on this specific topic, like what are the difficulties they are facing on it. It's just a benchmark in starting something new. Moving towards the next slide. So my further recommendation for my study would be the provincial and the country-based study should be conducted. In-depth research for the root cause of the depression should be conducted. Students should be the part of the curriculum and timetable designing committee. There should be counselor available in every university. Mental health awareness campaign should be promoted. Encouragement and empowerment should be the environment of encouragement and empowerment should be created. Healthy workplace policies should be there. Moving towards the next slide. Here I will be discussing the limitation of my research. So the limitation of the current study was focusing only on the Karachi. A larger sample size is needed to further expand the observation. Many people are hesitant in health business to talk about the depression, so filling out the survey was tough for participants. In my part of the world, it is still considered taboo to talk about depression, anxiety, and if you are going to psychiatrist, it's just mean you are mad. So like this is the perception of the people of the South Asia specifically regarding the mental health issue. It's not considered an important factor. It's even not considered as a disease. So it's the high time to spread the awareness about it. Like it's more debilitating than the other chronic illnesses. There were many aspects which could have been investigated in much more detail on the basis of the result of current studies, such as the high suicide rate, such as the specific failure, which problem the doctors and students are deprived of, and sleep deprivation causes, like how many hours of sleep they are getting and how many is the normal. So a lot of more factors came out in this study that need to be studied further in order to get a complete picture and to develop the policies for it. Moving towards the next slide. So here's the recipe for a perfect discussion. If you're writing an article for your own self, it's give you the freedom to write and flaunt your writing skill, but at the same time, most difficult part to write. Add as many references as possible. It usually consists of 5 paragraphs. First paragraph is basically what was the primary objective, and we compare it with the previous researches and give potential explanation and further implication. Second paragraph, we state the secondary findings. In the third paragraph, we explain 2 to 3 minor findings. Fourth paragraph, we give the final recommendations. And the fifth paragraph, we always state the limitation of our results, because that help the critics and help the journal reviewing committee to know, like, these people know their limitation and they have wrote it. Other than like defending yourself without any facts and figures, like, no, I have done this and I have done it all. It's just all crap. You need to know your limitation and you need to write it. Move towards the next. So finally, we are at the conclusion. Next slide. So it was concluded that depression is highly prevalent among the medical students when compared with on-duty doctors. So they should be screened with regular intervals and good counseling sessions to prepare them for a good professional performance and generating a better healthcare system. So with this, I would like to end my presentation. I hope this was some use to all of you. And thank you so much for being with me for like 25 minutes on the Sunday evening, because everyone here loves Sunday and you're still here, like all the 83 participants and listening to it. So it really means a lot for me. And if you have any question, any queries regarding this or anything regarding research or anything, you can message me, mail me separately. I'm always available for everyone. So
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Avi.
Thank you so much, Fazil, for the long, beautiful session. It is definitely not easy to have everyone involved when it's a research paper, but I'm so glad and impressed by the participants that we have, that they have joined in from the starting and they are very passionately interested and they've been asking great questions that I'm so impressed listening to. And I think I don't have to tell what an amazing job that you've done on the research, but exactly for that, we have 2 very special people here to, I would say the official term is critically analyze, but I think those are the best people to comment anything about it. And they can help give their own opinion and also help answer the questions along with you. So the 2 people are very special people. One's from India and one's from Malaysia. So first, I would like to call over Asma to introduce Dr. Tuti. Asma, can we have you?
Yes, thank you, Fazil. Thank you for this session. And before we'll take the questions part, I would like you to be introduced to our experts. So Dr. Tuti Iryani Mohammed Dao is a consultant. Next. is a consultant psychiatrist and a senior lecturer in Department of Psychiatry, National University of Malaysia. She has graduated in Bachelor in Medicine and Surgery at the University of Adelaide, Australia in 1997 and Doctor in Psychiatry at National University of Malaysia in 2005. She has been the head of Community and Rehabilitation Psychiatry Unit in Department of Psychiatry, National University of Malaysia Medical Center from 2015 to 2020. She has published over 20 journals in the field of psychiatry, attended electroconvulsive therapy fellowship visiting program in Duke University Medical Center, USA. This is about Tuti Aryani, and we are really pleased to have you here to get your answers. So I will let it over to Avi to introduce to our next expert.
Thank you for inviting me.
Moving on to the next very special person that we have from India is someone who I can very absolutely with absolute confidence can say he's one of the best people in terms of research that I've had the opportunity to come across. And he was kind enough to join us at not a very long notice. And I think I would like to extend this gratitude from behalf of Anne and Asma both and all of India, Kyrgyzstan and Malaysia for Dr. Shiv Joshi to join us. There are a few things that I need to tell you about Dr. Shiv. He completed his MBBS and has a postgraduate diploma in geriatric medicine. He has an internationally certified in the principles of bioethics and human rights by the UNESCO Department of Education and has certification in human rights. Currently, he's done his MD from Mahatma Gandhi Institute of Medical Sciences, Sevagram, serves in the capacities of National President for the Students Program of India, which is a part of the International Network of UNESCO Chair in the Bioethics, and as the National Convener for the Indian Medical Association Junior Doctors Network. He's an active contributor to the working group on the Primary Healthcare for Junior Doctors Network and a member of the Medical Ethics Committee. So I don't think I have to tell you at all the number of achievements that this amazing man has. And once you will know the way he talks and how passionate he's about research and the way he analyzes things, I am sure that there could not be better people to help us with today. So over to you, Dr. Shiv. And I am so sorry. I think it's Dr. Shiv Joshi. That's just an error from our side. So Dr. Shiv Joshi, over to you.
Thank you, Avi, for that wonderful introduction. And I think it was really heartening to see how Fazal, am I right? Fazal, yeah. So how Fazal has, I won't say he has brought a lot of information, not just about how to write a research paper, but it was also about the way he was delivering the presentation. So Fazal, I congratulate you for that. And in the meanwhile, I was also looking at, the command that you had when you were, telling about the findings that you have and the way you've done this research. And it is really commendable to see a medical student who is right now in their final year of study. I would say bachelor's study, and is so much interested in research and has an aptitude to bring in rigor to the research. So that is really commendable. Thank you, Fazal, for doing that. And I also congratulate EMSA, all the 3 chapters, India, Kyrgyzstan, and Malaysia, to create this opportunity, I think, for the young researchers out there who can know more about research. To me personally, I would say that doing research is more about understanding how it is to be done. What are the, what are the best practices? And, because every time it might not be possible for each one of us to have access to a large number of resources, right? A well-planned, gold standard type of research project that we often talk about when it comes to like studies like randomized control trials, or which are blinded, and such sort of gold standard studies, they require a lot of resources, and many a times we do not have access to such resources due to certain reasons and limitations. But what Fazal has shown here is how, being a medical student, you can still contribute to research. It doesn't have to be a very grand research question that you are answering. It can be something small yet relevant, to the community, to the place that you are working in, to the country you're coming from, to the people, okay, the population that you are addressing through this research. So that is a really good example, and to me that means a lot. Having that being said, I would like to have some critique, because I think that was the purpose of having me here. So so Fazal, it is a very good research, though I do have certain I would say comments. These are not like I'm not trying to criticize your paper or anything, but yeah, I'm trying to provide some critical appraisal. Probably this would be useful when you are trying to publish in more high impact journals, even higher impact journals, and when the audience who is here might also learn few more things from the discussion that this trigger points will generate. So first thing that I would like to clarify, Fazal, you mentioned while you were concluding the study, you mentioned that you were trying to compare the medical students with the on-duty doctors, right? So when we talk about on-duty doctors, do these doctors also include the residents or the postgraduate students in medicine? Or are we talking about the doctors who are no longer in study?
I only choose consultants for my study.
Yeah, so that is great, because of course, if you would have chosen all the on-duty doctors, including residents, that brings in a certain level of reporting bias, because that's not the case, right? So that is wonderful. My second observation was, we were mentioning during our objectives that when you try to define the secondary objective, okay, it can usually come after looking at the data, and when you can, when you think that there are some more important findings that can come from the same data, and you try to define your secondary objective. There's a little more to it. I would just add, we usually, like as a best practice in research, we usually prefer to define our objectives before doing any sort of analysis. There's a reason to it. There's something called a spurious association. Have you heard about that, Fazal?
Yes, I have heard about it.
Yeah. So what happens is that certain amount of times, because you have a lot of data, okay. Now I see here that you have a data of around 400 people with you. So what happens is, usually when we're trying to analyze, we would put in a combination or a cocktail of different variables and try to identify what is the association and correlation and things like that between these variables. Sometimes it may happen that while designing the study, we did not account for certain confounders, okay, because that was not the objective, because the objective of the study was something very specific, and during our analysis we might find certain associations which we might get, but they might not actually be real associations, okay. So that is why when we call them spurious associations. So these associations, they might just creep into our research in form of reporting bias, right? So I think it is very essential, whether it is a primary objective or a secondary objective, any kind of objective that you set for the research is always to be done in the design phase, and not after you receive the data or when you are analyzing your data. So whatever analysis you do outside of the objectives is called post hoc analysis, okay. So in post hoc analysis, whatever finding you get, you just report it as it is, okay. So that may be specifically mentioned as a post hoc analysis, that this is done outside of the objectives that were set for this research, so that the reader of your research is always aware that probably the sample size may not have accounted for this particular objective. Probably this was one of the associations that was seen during the data analysis phase, and that was not the objective of the study, okay. So that is just a transparent way of reporting your findings. Then there was another thing, when you were mentioning about the sample size estimation, it was really nice to see that you actually knew how to calculate the sample size, being in the final year of study in MBBS. Usually students do not know it unless they start their thesis or prepare for their dissertations and things like that. So could you throw some more light on, I understand you used OpenAPI, right? So OpenAPI also uses a factor called design effect, right? So can you explain like what design effect did you select to calculate your sample size?
So basically, thank you so much for like such good comments on about this and about research. It's really nice coming from someone like you. So about the sample size and knowing how to take out sample size. So in Pakistani MBBS curriculum, in third year we have like specific 3 months module on research methodology. That is being taught to every student, and all of us have to submit a research article, and we are graded on the basis of that. Then we are promoted to the next year. So it is really essential for every one of us here to learn it, like how to do it. So moving towards the Open Epi sample size. So Open Epi, when I started with the Open Epi, I took help with my community health sciences department. And when we were looking about the different sample size estimation, like the point we were asking, like what were the focal point we write, like how much is the prevalent, so we can take the sample size according to our population size. So when we saw it, the last study that was conducted was like about 10 years ago, like in 2000 or 12 years ago, around 2008. So what my mentors and my teacher recommended me to use like the 50% confidence interval when it is not known to get the sample size, that to reduce the bias, because as comparison to that time and this time, there have been a lot of changes in Pakistan in every aspect. So we just take a 50% of that and we got a sample size of 384.
Yeah, so that is a way when you do not know the prevalence of certain things, we usually select it as 50%, and there's again a reason to do that. I'm sure you might be aware, Fazal, but I'll just re-emphasize on that for all of us here. Usually, we are looking at a sample size that is on the upper level, like that goes on the upper limit, right? So if you go into OpenAPI again, and if you go for any other prevalence, keeping all the other parameters same, you will find that a prevalence of more than 50 or less than 50 is going to give you a lesser sample size than 384. Okay, so if you keep it at 95% confidence interval, design effect as 1, and error to 5%, by error I mean the absolute precision that you set at 5%, then you are going to get the sample size of 384. If you increase the prevalence to 60%, or maybe you decrease it to 40%, that number of the sample size that you will get at 95% CI will always be lesser than 384. So the idea is that when you don't know the prevalence at that particular time, we would usually safely take this proportion or the prevalence as 50%, and then we move about to calculate our sample size. The point about design effect is that, see, design effect is basically related to the type of sampling that you are doing. So what has happened in our cross-section study is that you've used a multi-stage sampling, right? Whenever there's a multi-stage sampling, there comes a factor of design effect, okay? Design effect of 1 is usually going to give you the sample size of 384 that you got for your study. I think there is a way to improvise that. Whenever you're doing so design effect is 1 if you're doing simple random sampling. Okay, so if you do a simple random sampling, so if you have a line listing of all the medical students in Karachi, or if you have a line listing of all the on-duty doctors in Karachi, and then you select from this line list, or that is what is called a sampling frame. Okay, so if from the sampling frame you're going to select some random people for your survey, which is not under your control. So there's something called as so this random selection can be done through certain processes. And I think just in interest of time, I won't get into those processes as of now. But design effect, whenever we're doing a multi-stage sampling, we can go for a higher design effect. We can go for a design effect of 1.5 or 2 for that matter. If you're going for a cluster sampling, you might still want to go, so there's something called as, so if you're going for intra-cluster for the cluster sampling, you might have to go for something called as intra-cluster variation, or intra-cluster, so there's something called as ICC. Okay, so based on that, you'll be calculating your design effect, and then you'll have to increase your sample size by some amount. So these are some advanced concepts. Maybe for people who are interested, people such as yourselves, Fazal, you might be more interested into understanding these, and maybe you might want to account that in your further researches. Okay, so whenever you're doing multi-stage sampling, or whenever you're doing certain complex sampling, which is not a simple random sample, you might want to include design effect into your sample size estimation. Okay? There are just few more comments. I wanted to mention that while we were discussing the objectives, we were talking about that your objective was to compare the prevalence, right, between the medical students and the doctors. And you reported it to be 26% for suicidal intentions in medical students and 16% in the medical doctors, right, or on-duty doctors. So what statistical test did you apply to see whether this difference in proportion that you are getting was significant or not? Did you apply a statistical test for that?
The statement which I gave was I didn't said any word and significant in that, because for that I need some more question to assess it whether it is true or it is not. Because I just add like two different questions just to assess this, because I wasn't expecting this high rate. So that's why I just reported the percentages, like this percent of the doctor and this percent of the. I didn't apply any test on it to justify it to be significant, because I didn't have sufficient data to give us such a statement like this is the significance and this is not significant.
Wonderful, wonderful. That is what I was talking about, the academic honesty, right? So while you're reporting, you did not apply those tests, and you were okay with, you just mentioned whatever values you got. Usually, when this difference, because what we want to know is that difference is not due to chance, right? And you were mentioning about p-values, right? So these p-values come from multitude of statistical tests that we might be applying to understand our data, right? And someplace, I think there was a typographical error on your slide when you were mentioning about the significant p-value. So when do you call the p-value to be significant? Fazal?
It depends on the test. Some of the tests have like less than 0.05, and if we move towards some other advanced statistical tests like Shapiro-Wilk and all that stuff, then it's above 0.5. It's totally depend on the test, like which test you are applying for it. I think the most of them which I applied in my city is less than 0.05.
Yeah. So that's what I was mentioning. Probably there was a typographical error in your slide. It mentioned, I'm not very sure, maybe you would want to revisit it, but then p-value of more than 0.05 was mentioned as significant, which is not the case, right? So a p-value less than 0.05 will be significant, and more than 0.05 is usually considered to be not significant. Again, a good practice is to report whatever p-value you have. Okay, because there is a school of thought whenever we talk about scientific results. There is the school of thought that says, how do you define, like, what do you say when the p-value comes out to be 0.049? Okay, so was it by chance or was it something real, right? So it is very difficult to answer to this, okay? Because if we go by that clear demarcation of 0.05, certain researchers will say no, 0.049 it is significant, okay? But that idea in itself is not very, so that is a convention. Taking p-value less than 0.05 significant is a convention, okay? But that does not mean that a p-value of 0.051 means that the results are of no value, okay? So it is a good practice to report of your p-value in whatever numbers it is. So if it is 0.049, just report it as 0.049. Some people go to an extent when they consider and they decide this before they do the study, that they'll be considering the p-value of 0.01 and less to be significant, okay? Or you might want to go a step ahead and say p-value of 0.001 and less will be considered significant, okay? All this matters if you are going to answer certain research questions where there's a chance of a lot of spurious association that I was discussing earlier. So there may be association which might just creep in. It was not supposed to be there, but just because of because of the sheer amount of data that you have, you find certain associations. So that is one thing. One last comment I would say, when we talk about publications, right? So some of us are into publication processes. I mean, we want to publish as much as possible, and there is this very popular quote, probably most of us would have heard here: publish or perish, right? So if you do not publish what you know, if you do not publish what you are doing, it is basically something that you have done and not documented and not accounted for. Now there's a newer concept added to that, that you just do not have to publish, you also have to advocate, okay? So it is not just important to publish, it is also important to what next? What after this publication? Is this publication going to create some change at a micro or a macro level in the society? If not, then the study is, it's just a publication. I mean, it's it's just another page of it, if someone's textbook or of someone's academic achievements. But it would be equally important to advocate taking your research. So if we have found this in our study, that societal intentions are around 26% in medical students, then can we do something about it? Can we design a study further in line to understand the mechanisms why such suicidal intentions are happening more in medical students as compared to the doctors, right? So I think that is the line of thought that I usually have in my line of research. Probably Fazal, you may share a bit of that also. So that's all from my end. I think it was a wonderful paper, and as always, there's always a scope for improving, and we can all do that and grow together. Thank you, Fazal, and thank you, Avi, for the opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. Shiv. It's been a pleasure to not only realize that obviously the critical appraisal that you had about the research teaches us so much, but also how to apply the principles of research to real life situations, how to take the medical profession ahead. So I think that's a beautiful thing that all of us at whatever point in our journey of learning research we are, it's not just publishing and perishing, it's about also advocating it. So that's a beautiful message. Thank you. I see we also have Dr. Tuti here. So ma'am, it's a pleasure to have you. Can we have your comments on the paper and what you want to talk about?
Okay. I'm amazed with your work and your team's work. I think how many of you? About 10 of you. I think this is a lot of effort. Gathering 384. I mean, it's 400 together. I mean, altogether, and as I understand, it's not part of your course. It's not part of your course. It's voluntary. Yeah. So it is amazing. I was astonished. I was checking again and again. Is this really from medical students? So I'm not. This work is not compulsory for them. They're doing this because of the love of research. So I congratulate to all of you for doing this. It must be hard as well. And just a side comment, since Fazil, you're there, and I heard that you won some kind of Intel award, and in 2014. So since you're there, I probably would like to sort of sidetrack a bit. I would recommend you to go into digital health.
Can you repeat your question? I couldn't get you.
I would recommend that you go into digital health. So because maybe you have some interest in computer, in IT, and those kind of things. Maybe one day you can go into the field of digital health.
I'm really interested in artificial intelligence and how it's like taken over our medicine. I'm planning on doing something.
Yeah, that is digital health. So please do so. So going back to this paper, okay, so it's hard for me to, I'm just imagining, because the thing here is when we do research, you can plan lots of things. But then when you talk about, is this feasible? Is it feasible to do the way that it should be this way? When it comes to feasibility, then you have to change this a bit, change this a bit, change this a bit. So the question is, which bit would you change first? Okay, so it depends on the research question. So I guess when I looked at the questions that you guys typed in the chat box here, I would imagine that you will be doing this research. Some of you is part of your course, like the UKM students is part of their course. Some of you may not be. So when it's voluntary, you have to find your own time. So the depending on your research question, there are certain things that has to sort of, you can't, you need to follow the rules. There are certain things that you probably, okay, we'll just put this in limitations. Okay, so I guess if your objective is prevalence of depression, okay, I would say sampling is important. I think Dr. Shiv has commented on sampling. So, but I would imagine that, yeah, I'm trying to imagine, because you are doing multi-stage sampling. Okay, it would be nice if it's multi-stage cluster sampling, as Dr. Shiv mentioned, because then you can take the whole first year and then the whole second year or things like that, rather than it is convenient sampling. So, and usually design effect is 2. So that would be a lot. So maybe you can say, why don't we convert into online questionnaires instead? So those are the things that you have to go forward and go backwards. If you change the objective, or should you change the method? Because when it comes to making the study realistic, that you can do a study and get some kind of results, because if you think, oh, this is going to be a limitation, you won't be doing any study. So going this back and forth to make sure that you have a study that is with a good research question, with a method that is pretty okay. That is the difficult bit. That needs a bit of wisdom. But doing research, it doesn't need wisdom. But when you want to do limited resources research with a acceptable method, that needs a bit of wisdom. Okay, but I commend you for trying. I think this is great. And the fact that you chose this topic, do you know that we are, compared to the rest of the population, we are at the highest risk, we have a higher risk for suicide because we are doctors. And among all of you here, if I'm the only psychiatrist, I have the highest, my risk is higher compared to you guys. Except if there's an anesthesiologist here, he or she will have a higher risk, okay? So yeah, it is timely. The choice of the research question is timely because, in the Western countries, in developed countries, they are talking about depression and suicide among physicians, okay? So you and me, all of us, we have to know that we are at risk. So we need to take care of ourselves. And this is the bit about advocacy that Dr. Shiv said just now. And I love that. I love the fact that you pointed about advocacy, because I hate papers that are published for the sake of publishing. Our papers should contribute to the community. It should make an impact, even though it's little, but it's about the community. It's not about your CV. It's not about, whatever you need promotion. It is about contribution to the community. I think that there is we need to understand the bigger picture here. So, yeah. So the other thing is, I just want to talk about sampling a bit, talking about the feasibility. For example, I had a friend who she couldn't do a simple random sampling because it was a busy clinic. Okay, you can't have a list. Everyone's busy. The clinic was small. It was small that you don't have room to stand. It's not that you don't have room to sit. You didn't have room to stand. So it was small. So so you can have a list where you can do a simple random sampling, list of names of patients. So what she did was she randomized which room she should be in. Like if she comes today, let's say there's 10 rooms, she randomized the room that she should go in, and she should, ask those patients to be the respondents. I mean, at least there's something there. So I found that creative. So if there's a way you can be creative, we know we have limited resources. A busy clinic, they don't have time, they don't have space and time to fit us in. But yeah, there are ways to be creative about it when we have limited resources. I think maybe the other things are, they are just minor things. They're minor, and I'm how do you say it? I'm a person who thinks about resources. And based on the fact that you have very minimal resources, to me, I think this is great effort. But I would want to use this time to suggest, where can you learn about research more? For me, is Twitter. Okay, Twitter is a great resource. It's a great resource to get connected, understanding research, understanding the conversations between academicians when they criticize a certain research. And if you follow the right person, you will be updated. Okay, there's a latest systematic review that is just published. And even if you follow the right person, they would do a bit of critical appraisal on the paper. And that's, wow, to me, that's excellent. For me, because I'm a busy clinician, so I don't have time to sort of read lots of things. Even they would, like your abstract is about maybe 250 words. So if you follow the right academicians, the important papers, they would summarize into 3 lines in Twitter. And you would pick up a lot of skills, I think, in Twitter. And if you're wrong, somebody will point it out. It's a healthy environment, depending on who you follow, because I use my Twitter for academic purposes, a bit about cats, a bit of gardening, to have a bit of spice in life, But it's where I learn statistics, where I learn my latest prescribing guidelines, and where I make fun of medical students as well. I need a bit of entertainment. So yeah, I think that's all. Thank you again for inviting me. I think I'm amazed with what you guys are doing.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tuti. It was absolute pleasure to listen both your views coming from so different directions. So I think it covers the whole sense in a very comprehensive way. And I totally want to, I feel very proud for all of us on one thing, exactly like how Dr. Tuti said, that ma'am being a psychiatrist right now, it's a great thing that now depression is being treated as a true disease by a lot of people, which is like talking about it, considering it like just any other injury, that can be corrected when you go to the right doctor for it. So like Fazil presenting a whole research over it, it's in itself a big step towards it. So thank you everyone who's joined us there. One thing that I want to take everyone's attention over here is that we have about 80 participants right now who are at different points in their journeys of learning research, like someone who might be in their final prof, who might be very interested in research, and a few people who might just have this beautiful idea about what research is without even knowing what steps go into it. So that's the beauty of a JCM, that people at different steps can understand things. So I have tried to filter a few questions by the audience, which are specifically by those who are at the beginning curve of their research journey. So I would like any of the experts or Fazil to answer them. I'll just club them together. So there's this question by Jaswinder Singh. How should we start with the research? Like, should we go for clinical first or the non-clinical stuff? Also, research should be under doctors involved in it, or can a student start a new research with his own group? How do you publish it? How will it become authentic in India, except a few institutions? Institutions rarely focus on research. So it's a lot of questions, but I think it gives you a gist of it about they're at the starting curve of beginning a research. So what tips do you have for them, and how can they pursue it? So Dr. Shiv, I think you can take it first. That's it.
Thank you, Avi. And I think this is a really interesting question. And when it comes to doing research, I think the most important thing while doing research is your research question. Um, so how do you define it, right? That's where everyone begins. What research question you want to answer, right? Now, if I understood correctly, you're talking about whether to take a clinical question or a non-clinical question. I think it is more about what you are observing around yourself. Okay, what is that question that you want to answer and is feasible for you to answer? See, it is not just important. Okay, so I might have a lot of interest in maybe cancer or maybe aging, right? But considering where I am right now, answering a question related to like curing cancer might be not feasible for me, right? So defining that right research question is the key to start your research. Okay. So I think it is not about choosing whether I should choose a clinical research question or a non-clinical research question. There's something called as finer criteria of selecting a research question. Okay, so your research question has to be feasible. That is the first criteria. Okay, it has to be novel, right? So sorry, I missed the I. I is interesting. The research question has to be interesting for you. Okay, it has to be novel. So it cannot be, it should not be that whether paracetamol is going to treat fever or not. Everyone knows that paracetamol treats fever, right? So there is no fun in doing that same study again and again, right? So it is not about, it is about generating novelty, right? So your research question should be novel, right? It should be relevant. Okay, so a research question must be relevant not to you as a researcher, but to those people who will be study participants of your research. Okay, so if I am going to do a study on tobacco, okay, or if I am going to do a study on some drug X which is going to cure certain disease, is this drug going to help the masses who are going to be part of this study? Is this drug going to benefit just few of us who are who are trying to file for a patent or something like that? So what is that reason for doing the research? I think everything that you ask lies there. So the right research question is not a clinical versus non-clinical, but a right research question is something that is relevant to people around you. It is something that is feasible for you to achieve in a specific time that you have, right? And it should be novel and interesting for you to pursue it, right? So I think it starts from there. Probably Dr. Tuti is here and she might have more insights on that. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Over to you, Dr. Tuti.
Well, I think it's an excellent question, but I also think, frankly speaking, to find a good research question is hard. I mean, a good research question that is feasible at the same time. It's hard, but it's worth it. It's worth it that you are. What I noticed, what I've seen is some people, they take time to find what is the research question. They take a lot of time finding what is the good research question. But how do they do that is they find the population of interest. Let's say you are interested in people with autism, okay? So you meet them, you meet their parents, and you ask them, what do you want to find out? Okay, so let's say your interest is medical students. You ask medical students, what do you think we should find out? Is online learning helping? Is not online learning is not helping? So yeah, I've seen people who they spend months and months just go to the community and ask them what they need to know and what kind of questions will help them. I think that is one of the best practices to find a good research question.
Thank you, Dr. Ruti. I think very aptly, as ma'am said, that you need to go into the reality of the situation sometimes. Sometimes we just enter the academic part of it so much that we don't really think of it as really being helpful to the society. We just take it up as an academic project. Whereas we have to really remember it why the research is being actually taken out to actually benefit the society. So
And also you can ask that on Twitter as well.
totally.
So, yeah, definitely. You can ask anything on Twitter. Yep.
I think I've never been as inspired to be as active on Twitter as I have been right now.
Okay.
And a lot of people here. So thank you so much, Dr. Tuti.
Okay.
And one question I'll again like to club, which is a specific question again. Vaishnavi asks that is there, like when you approach subjects for a clinical study, is there some sort of voluntary participation form, or what is the procedure? How do we approach them? And secondly, when we make a form and we get the responses, how do we authenticate that the responses are by these subjects or not? Like, what is the procedure to that? So, Dr. Shiv, you want to take that first?
Yeah, thank you, Avi. Again, I think this question has two parts when I look at it. One is talking about ethics in a broad sense. So, when you're talking about selecting your study participants, it is a lot to do with the written informed consent. Okay, so there is going to be a voluntary participation form. We usually call it a consent form when we are discussing research. What is important while you do this is that uh, this form has to be explained. It has to be explained to the research participant. I mean, what usually I've seen happening is people go and just try to take signatures of their study participants while not actually making sure that they understood what they're signing up to or signing up for. So that might happen, and I think it is a very important area whenever research is concerned. So science should not be at the expense of conscience. Okay, so it cannot be at the expense of conscience. So it has to be ethical and it has to be with the consent. So of course there will be a voluntary participation form. The format of which you can look at ICGME guidelines. You will find the format for how to take a consent. And I think a lot of other good mentors and guides, your professors might be able to guide you in your respective institutes, and we can also do that. I mean, I work in the area of bioethics since past 4 years now, and I've come to understand this, that one of the basic aspects of research is ethics, because if you derive your findings through something that we call as window research, then it is really debatable. The findings that you are deriving is debatable. So it basically creates a conflict whether it is for yourself or actually for the community that you are trying to benefit. So that is one important part. The second part of it is more of an academic question. I would say that whether the responses that I have got are authentic. Okay, now, I think this thing has to be addressed at two stages. One, when you're designing your study itself. Okay. So let me give you an example. I was doing a study on adolescent pregnancies. Okay. And now, adolescent pregnancy in itself is a taboo, and people do not usually talk about it. They don't want to come out with it. So let's just imagine if I go on with a study design where I have a form with a lot of details about how did you become pregnant, or what led to this adolescent pregnancy, or things like that. I might get responses, but there is a very high chance that those responses will suffer something called as social desirability bias. Okay, so it will lead to me collecting answers that I want to hear. Okay, it will lead me to collect the answers that are just desirable for me to understand. So if there is a person whom I do not know, they will just tell to me, no, it just happened because I was in love with that person. Okay, but basically we did not know, but it was an incest, okay, that led to that teenage pregnancy, or it was a rape. We do not know that, right? But then how do you ensure that the responses that you gather are authentic? This is not simple. Okay, this is a complex question. And one way to do it is to have a study design that takes care of that. Okay, So instead of doing the study design in form of a open-ended or such a questionnaire that I have to fill from adolescent mothers themselves, can I think of a strategy where, can I think of a methodology where I go to the community, I do focus group discussions with people who are not actually adolescent mothers, okay? And I'm trying to find out that, let's just say that these are 5 adolescent mothers. So what could be the various reasons that you think that they became adolescent mothers? Okay. Now what happens is that the community is not talking about themselves. They're talking about what happens around them, and they become open about it. They become more vocal about it. Okay. Now the responses that I would have much more reliability in that. Okay. It would be much more reliable. So I think that is one way to do it. So to design a study in a way where you are able to minimize such bias that might creep in. Second way to do it is during your analysis. Okay, so while you are analyzing your responses, you might want to stratify your analysis or do a subgroup analysis. But in that case, you need a higher sample size. Okay, so if I'm saying that there was a survey where I'm trying to understand whether there is a communication taking place between parents and their children. Okay, so can I do an analysis where a same question was asked, to the parent as well as a child, and then I can analyze whether there is agreeability between them. Okay, so I ask the child whether your parents they sit with you, whether they sat with you in the past 1 week. Okay, child says yes. Same question is asked to the parents. Did you sit with your child in the past week? If they say yes, there's an agreeability there, right? So that might be another way. So while you're doing your analysis, so while I'm comparing the responses, is there agreeability between the different responses that I have received? Okay. Or within the group of males, am I getting a similar type of pattern in those responses as compared to females, right? So that can be another way. So this issue can be tackled in 2 ways: one at the design phase, another in the analysis phase. And I think it will take time to understand how exactly to do that. Probably, if you have more questions, we can discuss it in another group or forum. Yeah.
I think that's a beautiful way of looking at things. I think as someone told me at some time that sometimes it's very difficult to get people listen to what you have to say. So, and what we end up doing is we start cribbing about the situation, that what can we do that they're not listening about it, right? Similarly, so when we crib about that, we have the wrong responses. So what can we do about it? Rather, we start thinking about it like it's our responsibility in a way to find a way to tackle the situation. Like when you communicate, if people are not listening, maybe you need to up your game to hook onto their attention. So thank you so much for that beautiful message, Dr. Shiv. Dr. Tuti, do you want to take that up?
Okay. So I think I'll do the second bit, which Dr. Shiv mentioned about being anonymous. Being anonymous is, to me, is very important, depending on the research. But to me, it's very important because when I did my master's, my research was also about adolescents' help-seeking behavior on the internet. Okay, and I was measuring CBCL is there's depression there, there's anxiety, there's lots of things in the items. So how do you make sure that the responses that you get are authentic and genuine? So I was looking through the research methods, and I found a research method on studying alcohol in this is in the United States. And that book said, if you're going to collect data from the schools, okay, you're going to go to the school and you need to collect data. Make sure you do not put your things, your bags or whatever, in the teacher's room, because you will not get an authentic response. Okay, so because of that, because after reading that, I was very careful. I made sure that when I went there, when I collected responses from the class, 1 class, 2 classes, 3 classes, there was no teachers in the room. and they wanted to help, but we asked them to leave. That's one. The other thing is when they return their consent form, make sure that the consent form and their questionnaire is not together. Because if it's together, then it's not anonymous. It should be in two different boxes. So you cannot link their consent forms with their answers. So if you put them together, it's not anonymous, then you know it's social desirability. So it's those kind of things. Again, it's about being creative and having some empathy as well. That's all.
Thank you, Dr. Tuti. I must say that the fact that how informative the session is being is, even after starting so much, like every time we have a session, I get to know about a different kind of bias that can come into picture. So there used to be the selection bias, the attrition bias, the Buxonian bias. And I'm really glad to know that most of us have got to know something very practical and something very prevalent is the social desirability bias. Okay, so we just have one more question, which is directed to Fazil. And I would want Asma to take that over. Asma, if you're there.
Oh, first of all, I would like to thank Dr. Shir Joshi and Dr. Ian for their commendable comments. Like, it was really interesting. I got into these questions and answers. I probably had a lot to learn from you. It was really appreciable that you are here. So before we would move to a next part, there is one last question that we are going to take. That is from the Athava Amsa India. She's asking a question that is to Dr. Fazal. We would like to make it precise that, sir, there are 20 publications to your name. Given how hard is to search for a proper research idea, how were you able to find so many different avenues to explore? So that's the question for you, Fazal.
Yeah,
Okay.
Fazal, I have that question as well.
Okay, so thank you, Dr. Tuti, for that. And first of all, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a sir, I'm just Fazal, I'm just a friend, not the person to be called doctor or sir. So just starting with that. So I was a science nerd since grade 6 in my school. I was the one who was always in the science fairs, winning prizes and all that stuff. But the basic love for my research started when the Intel Ice of Science Fair started. Most of you must have known it. So I did that in my high school. And after that, when I started my MBBS, during the first year, I just got really good mentors to teach me. I just started my research with helping one of my teacher completing her MPhil degree thesis. And I helped her. I just gained the experience from her. She was doing work on spirometry, and she was establishing the spirometry ranges for the specific population of Pakistan, Karachi population. So with her, I went to like 16 different schools, assessed like 800 plus children with their spirometry ranges, learn how to write a dissertation, learn how to write an article, run the stats and all, everything. Because she was like, you need to be self-sufficient if you want to do research. You need to, like, even if you're a medical student, you need to know stats. Because if you don't know stats, you will be always be lost about like what is your research and how have you done it. So the first thing I did was like I took like the stats workshops to learn like what basically stats is and how to apply it in like medical knowledge. So I just started from there. The first research that was published in 2016, that was like end of my first year in medicine and starting of the second year in medicine. That was with that teacher, and with that I just started my journey of like different publication and different avenues. Most of my researches in is like psychology. Basically, I have started with I've done researches on students, I've done researches on doctor, house officers. I've explored every avenue of like what are the different points and how can we tackle it. After that, after gaining like experience for 1 or 2 years, I moved towards the clinical side of the research. I got really good biochemistry department in my university, and they helped me to design and find a new biomarker for cancer detection. So that was a clinical work. So I took break from this paper-based and cross-sectional studies, and I learned that for like 3 months in the lab. After my university used to finish at like 5 in the evening, and I was in the lab till 11 in the night. And my mom was like, "Why you're doing?" I was like, "I just find it interesting. Like it's not, you can't do research if you're not interested in it. You need to be interested. You need to love it. You need to do it. You need like ambition for it if you want to do it. So it's easy if you want to do it. You need to form a group. You need to form collaborations with different, like I have different friends in university, different universities in Karachi. So we just form a group and an alliance, and it help us to divide the work among us. Like we help in the sample collection, we help in the article writing. So you can do it. First initial one or two or three publication takes time because you are new to something, and you need, and the first thing that my teacher told me, you need to keep your expectations very low when you're starting the research. You cannot be like, I'm doing my first research, it will be published in the PubMed journal. No, it won't be like that. One of the first researches, when you have like done 20 researches and then get back to my first, I'm like, oh shit, I did this, like it has so many mistakes and it's not in a good journal. But you have to know that you don't have to keep the expectation like, going to do it, it's going to be a best one. No, it's going to have a lot of error, you're going to get a lot of criticism, but you need to build on that. Don't take it negatively, always build on that, and you're going to ace it. If I have done it, you can do it too. And I have few more. No, I don't have any more questions, so that's it. I hope that's answer your question, Atharva. I think so.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Fazal. Thank you so much, Dr. Shiv and Dr. Tatiariani. Thank you so much. So it was really a privilege to have you here. Before we could move to the next part, I would like to uh, appreciate your presence here and present the certificate of appreciation. I would like Mansima to take the pictures meanwhile.
Yeah, so ready?
Okay, so for certificate of appreciation for Dr. Tuti Iriani for joining us. So here we go.
All right. Done.
Okay, next one. Okay, so here we go. Mansima, you can meanwhile let us know because we can't smile for 10 minutes.
Yeah, it's fine.
Mansima, you can just give
All
the
right.
countdown.
Yes,
In 3, 2, 1. Okay, so last but not the least, for Mohammed Fazil Hussain Qureshi. In 3, 2, 1.
Done.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you all for joining us. So it was really a privilege to have you, and especially the valuable knowledge that you have imparted will remain with us forever. And we are even more privileged to have you on our next session. That's going to be more interesting, like you have been joining us for today. Thank you so much. So before we move to the next part, so we will like to have a small break before we head to the small group discussions. I know we all guys need to have a cup of coffee to get more energized for small group discussions because we will be imparting our knowledge and the experts will be joining us as well. So here we take a break of 7 minutes and then we will move forward.
It's just the last session after this, guys. So make sure you attend it because I think that's the most interactive session, a place where you can all have your doubts cleared with very esteemed facilitators that we have, which Asma will be introducing just after the break.
The Journal of Asian Medical Students Association, or JAMSA, is an international online, open access, peer-reviewed, student-led biomedical research journal of the Asian Medical Students Association International, or AMSA International. JAMSA aims to broaden the awareness of the value of research and provide medical students with the opportunity to develop the skills necessary to become promising researchers. The activities organized by JAMSA include JAMSA regular editions, EAMSC and AMSC abstract books, research contests, research training workshops, JAMSA Journal Club, and social media campaigns. JAMSA publishes a new volume every year and welcomes all forms of scientific articles, including original articles of your own, systematic narrative reviews, meta-analysis, case reports, letter to the editor, commentaries and perspectives. All our volumes are online open access journals, indexed into Ulrich's Web, Google Scholar, Index Copernicus, and Gale Cengage Learning. Here at JAMSA, we bring international recognition to the research work of young researchers without having them to pay hefty publication costs. JAMSA also promotes the spirit of research and develops critical thinking skills by hosting academic competitions, monthly journal clubs, and training workshops. So what are you waiting for? Submit your article now. Check out JAMSA's website for more information or stay in touch with us through our social media platforms on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. Welcome to JAMSA.
Guys, we'll just restart the session in the next 3 minutes. Guys, hope everyone is ready. Can turn back your videos on. Asma. Yeah.
Right. So is everyone here? Can we see your smiling face again? All right. So welcome back, everyone. Hope you are energized and hope you are just gone through the break. So moving towards our next part of this session. So it will be a time to apply our knowledge. And the most important thing is that this is an inter-chapter journal club meeting. And the main motto of this is also a friendship. So while we are heading you into the breakout rooms, we want you to interact with each other, discuss about the paper, give your commendable comments about the paper, and come up with some modifications if you have any such. So for that purpose, we will break you out in three small groups. For that, there will be our facilitators. So let me introduce you to our facilitators. So for the group one, our facilitator will be Charles Kivintu. He is our associate editor, original research, JAMSA. Thank you, Charles, for having you here. The next facilitator is going to be Moiz Ibrahim. He is managing editor, web and publications. He will be heading the group two. Thank you, Moiz, for having you here. And then the third one is going to be Rahul Rangan. He is the chief of education and research, AMSA India. He'll be heading the group three. So thank you, Rahul, for having you here. So the instructions are very simple. This is actually a very interactive part. So make the small group bit interactive. And if it's possible, just come up with a representative who will represent the ideas, comments within 2 minutes. For this, you will be given only 15 minutes to come up with some creative ideas within this short span of time. And also don't forget to interact with other chapters. That's the main motto of the journal club meeting. So now I would like to request host to head you to the small group discussions. Meanwhile, so for that you'll give in only 10 or 15 minutes.
Guys, remember to turn because only then will it be most interactive. I'm so sorry, Rahul. I think it ended in between, and I'm sure we are probably just hanging on to the edge to learn more about it. So we'll have another session for it for sure. But till the time, I think uh, anyone from your group who wants to volunteer can private message Rahul just to summarize what all the people who have joined in all the three groups. Just I hope you have a group representative just to summarize what you've talked, and if there's anything you've learned, not specifically just for the SDG, if anything overall you want to comment about. So please just give a volunteer, and trust me, it's one of the best learning experiences to come up and volunteer as a group representative. You learn a lot of things that you might have just collected. So I hope everyone is here. Great. So we are officially in the last session for the day, and it's been a beautifully hectic day, where I think as productive as it could have been, with different experiences there. I would like to again thank the three facilitators that we've had who've done a beautiful job in all the three groups. Asma, I, and have been visiting the three groups, and I think we have had as much to learn as anyone else over here. So thank you so much, Rahul, Mui, and Charles. You've been exceptional. I hope everyone is energized and something or the else you've learned along the way. So not wasting much time, I'd like to just invite anyone from group one. Rahul, do you want to, group one, sorry, group one is Charles. So
Yes.
Charles, do you want to nominate anyone if there's a representative from group one who wants to just summarize what they've learned today?
Either can summarize, can present questions, or simply can give comments about this. We welcome that.
That is your call to take if there's no volunteer.
There is we have a volunteer.
Okay.
Onam, is Onam here?
Hi, everybody. I am Onam and I'm a member of AMSA India. So yeah, it was a very enlightening session with Charles here. And we basically talked about the importance of having very specific implications before we begin a research. So here we selected two comparison groups, essentially. We basically talked about how these two comparison groups, what the implication of having these two comparison groups would be. I mean, sure, we've said that depression is prevalent in medical students and doctors, but what is the importance of having these two groups and comparing them essentially here? We also talked about that how the research paper could be more specific at different points. We talked about talked about analytical studies and how it mentions that it is a comparative cross-sectional analysis in the title, and it goes on to mention that it is basically a descriptive cross-sectional study. So there is not enough specification about the kind of study it is essentially. So yeah, I mean, we talked about that, and we had a few questions come up that Charles was very nice enough to answer.
I understand that it's not a huge long enough time for the amount of knowledge that we want to extract, but I think the limitation of the time, and still you guys have managed to do a lot. And I really like how, Onam, you've dissected every word there, and that's the beauty of it. Like when you're writing something so formal as a research, every word holds value, every word can have a meaning. So, and that is best expressed in the way that we decide a title, right? So there's so much thought gone into the title, that how long it needs to be or how long it does not need to be. Moving on to group two, Mui, do we have a representative from group two, or do you want to nominate anyone?
No, we do have one. Tanisha will present some questions. I think it was a lively one, and we do have some questions about some terminologies for some new students into research, and also we have some questions regarding the paper as a whole. Sorry. So Tanisha, you can go ahead.
Hi, good evening, everybody. So I think our group two was not as familiar with a lot of the research terms. So we had a couple of doubts, and if anyone would be kind enough to explain them, we'd be grateful. So we basically studied the abstract that was provided and the title. So in the title, they mentioned a comparative cross-sectional analysis. I think it was explained in general terms what a cross-sectional analysis meant as such. And I think we got a fair idea of what that meant. Our main question was in regards to the questionnaire that was chosen, PHQ-9, because we wanted to know why exactly you've chosen that particular questionnaire and how exactly the scoring of this questionnaire would work.
Okay, so that's a really good question. So we choose PHQ-9 because of like whenever a questionnaire is designed, it has a specific specificity and sensitivity. And according to that basis, the PHQ is regarded very high in psychology, because there are like many other questions, like there's DAC 27, there's PHQ2, and there are many more questionnaires. But considering my sample population, I have tackled with doctors that have like very limited time to give it to me, or if I give them like a questionnaire with 20 different questions, they're not gonna fill it. They're gonna just be like, okay, I don't have time for it. So the PHQ-9 like specifically have simple 9 questions. Those are marked from 0 to 4, and it have a total score of 27. And on the basis of like how much score a person get, they are divided into 5 different categories. That is minimal, mild, moderate, moderately severe, and severe depression. Anyone having scored less than 3 is like considered non-depressed, not depressed at all. I hope
That's really interesting. Yeah. I think there was another question that was brought up was that if we could like generalize it more in regards to the specific year of study. For example, I think someone brought up the point that first years are generally really enthusiastic, and that enthusiasm tends to carry them through the year. I believe that we thought that if it was more broken down year-wise, it would have given us a little better idea.
Yeah, that's a really good idea, because this was the research that I conducted like in initial medical school years. So that's why I conducted it this way. After doing my research, I had the same question: what if there's a difference year-wise? So I have a separate paper on that. That is named like Depression Among Medical Students of Karachi. I may send the link here. You can read up on that, and that's basically year-wise difference and what are the factors, like different year-wise factors which are affecting them.
All right. And in correlation to that as well, the symptoms, because I think the symptoms that the doctors gave as their most commonest symptoms and the symptoms that the medical students gave as their commonest symptoms were fairly separated. And I think the medical students gave helplessness as their most common symptom. And we were of the opinion that could be because they are in fact not as much in control of their life as a doctor would be, said financially or so on. And so it would make sense that that symptom would manifest in that way. I think I think that's pretty much. Yeah.
Thank you, Tanisha, for bringing up concising really relevant questions. So from Fazl's amazing answer, what I would want to summarize it. The beauty of it is you can start with the research and you can take it in a direction where it can lead to even more relevant things. So it's always the first step. And depending upon how you divide people as different cohorts, your researchers can have different meanings, right? And secondly, just I think if I can just enter the medical territory there, one reason to that part why the depression symptoms might be different between children and adults is because there's something called atypical depression, which is really prevalent in adolescents. So in that, scientifically, you see opposite patterns of appetite and sleep. Like it's usually increased or decreased sleep in adolescents. You find it in terms of atypical depression. So there's a role of physiology as well in there. Okay, not wasting much time. Moving on to the last group. One more minute to summarize the whole discussion that Rahul had with you guys. Rahul, who's the volunteer from the group?
We have Meena with us.
Hi. So yeah, group 2 actually covered a lot of our points. I think about the future of the like in terms of which years had different symptoms and stuff like that, and also about the doctors. So yeah, Faisal was answering our questions with respect to that. Again, he's conducted different researches, but I think one more takeaway is so there's 2 categories. So there's people who don't answer the questionnaire, and there's obviously a reason behind that. Obviously you can't prod much into it, but what are you going to do about those people? Because it's more likely than not that they do have some form of depression, which is why they're hesitant to answer the questionnaire. So it's what do you do about that set of the population. And also since this is a topic that you sometimes need intervention, and of those who were questioned, those who had severe depression, most of them were questioned as like not exactly a follow-up, but like they were questioned more about it, and most of them did not use therapy or did not take medications, and they thought it was a phase and that it would tide over. So again, lack of knowledge. So how do you carry forward what you've researched from this research itself, not necessarily do another paper, but its impact? I think that's what we discussed a lot. And also, yeah, I think a bit of like personally, and like one or two people in the group were like the results, they were not hard to interpret, but they were hard to kind of consolidate and form a consensus about for someone, a layperson who's reading the paper. It was a lot of scattered blocks of information. So I think that, but I think overall we agreed that it was, you do realize that it's still scratching the surface and there's a lot more that can be done. And I think that's what this session was kind of all about.
Thank you so much, Meena, for summarizing everything that Group 3 had to say. To summarize it all, I think you've covered it everything, but more or less, the beauty of the JCM that we see today is that as important is as the presentation itself is, the critical appraisal is as much an important part of it. And I am just glad to see that we've had beautiful experts who've shared their knowledge for all of us. But not only that, do you realize that at the end of it, you all have been as much a part of the critical appraisal. Even though you didn't start with knowing anything about research or maybe different things about research, you ended up being a part of critically appraising things, and you have your own thoughts about it. And the best thing is nothing is really right or wrong. It's just going in the right direction. So ending with that note, I would want to give it up to Asma, who would want to facilitate amazing people. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much, all the participants. Especially thank you, facilitators, for joining us today and facilitating the whole session. It wasn't possible without you participants who have been actively participating, giving their commendable comments. And not only you, but I think we all learn from each other, facilitators from participants, participants from facilitators. So that's actually what Journal Club meeting is. So it's a kind of interaction. We met through 3 chapters and we made it happen. It was such a beauty. So I am really thankful for facilitators who took time out of their busy schedule. I know they have been so busy, and it was really a privilege to have them here. So we will move with the certificate of appreciation for our facilitators. For that, I will request Mansima to take the pictures and just go through the slides. All right, so the first certificate of appreciation will be for the Charles Kevin, and thank you for your time. Mansima, please take the pictures.
Yes. So 3, 2, 1. Done.
Perfect. Next one. Mansima, ready?
Ready? 3, 2, 1. Done.
All perfect. Next one.
Yeah.
And next.
Ready?
Ready?
3, 2, 1.
Perfect. Done. Thank you so much. Thank you again, facilitators, for this session. And now I would let it over to Avi.
Thank you so much, Asma, for doing such an amazing job. And I love how it is gradually getting on the express highway as we are reaching towards the end of the show, and still very efficient. So thank you everyone, for everyone who stayed at the end of it. Closing towards my side is, I think we've almost covered all the relevant points. The fact that we could not do everything just is a bigger message in the direction that we need more of JCMs. We need more of people coming up and presenting it. Might not be this big the next time, but it should serve its purpose. So I'm definitely looking forward to more of it. And we have a very special guest right now with us, who was kind enough to manage to join us right here. He's someone who's the regional chairperson for AMSA Kyrgyzstan. We have Parth with us, and it's such an honor to have you, Parth, to actually give us the closing statement for the end of it, because you shall be doing it for 3 chapters at the same time. So thank you so much, Parth. Can we have you?
Yeah, am I audible?
Yes, you're audible. You can continue.
Okay. So thank you, Avi, for introducing me. And good evening to all, and appreciate your presence for today's Interchapter General Club meeting. Dear colleagues and members, I deem it a great honor and privilege to propose the vote of thanks on behalf of AMSA Kyrgyzstan, AMSA India, and AMSA Malaysia in this wonderful JCM. Let me first of all start by giving warm thanks to our organizing members and chapter representatives for organizing today's JCM and making it interesting. First and foremost, I thank our leaders, EC member, and other officials of AMSA International for always guiding us, supporting us, and assisting us. We are grateful to our overall chairperson, Marjorie, for her words of encouragement. I thank for her kindness, interest, and continuous efforts for development of our organization. I owe our special gratitude to our speakers and experts who have worked hard, assisted, and contributed selflessly to ensure that this occasion becomes a memorable success. Most importantly, I thank all our members from Kyrgyzstan, India, and Malaysia for accepting our invitation and being present today. We hope you all have enjoyed it and hopefully we met your expectations. I hope you had a fruitful discussion and might have come up with the answers to what, why, and how of research paper writing in this JCM. Last but not least, I would like to appreciate our chapter representatives by giving them appreciation certificates. So first of all, Asma from Kyrgyzstan. Can we have a picture?
Yes, just a second. Okay, so ready? 3, 2, 1.
Thank you.
Okay, so next will be Anne from Malaysia.
Yep, ready? 3, 2, 1.
Yeah, and at last, Avi from India.
All right, 3, 2, 1. Done.
Okay, so at last, I thank again to all chapter representatives for their exceptional contribution towards organizing this first tri-national inter-chapter general club meeting. Good luck for your future engagements. Once again, thank you all for your attention.
Thank you so much, Parth, for those kind words. And thank you to all the participants who are here. Asma, can we have a photo at the end with everyone? Asma and Anne?
Yes, before we will move to that part, we will like to have RC Malaysia Siana to give a few words about this meeting. Can we have her?
Siana, do we have you?
Siana, or if not Siana, we can have Sharon to give some words about it.
Hey, I think I'll talk on behalf of Sheena. So thank you very much, Asma and Avi and Anne, for this wonderful meeting this evening. Then I believe everyone here has a lot of inputs and plenty of insights on research. And thank you very much for this wonderful session.
Thank you so much, Sharon. It means so much that all the 3 chapters could come across such dignitaries from the different chapters. So, Asma, I think we can move ahead with the photo.
Yes, thank you so much for being this Sunday with us. It was really a fun Sunday because Sunday we usually prefer to spend somewhere, but it was a research Sunday. We got to know about a lot. We met so many people, and it is really privileged to have these people. Like it's a very much interactive session, and I hope we would be able to make such kind of journal club meetings in future and have you again with us. So before we leave, we will like to have a photograph for the memory that lasts forever. For that, I would like you to open your video so that we can move forward. All right. So there are two slides, Mansimar and me. Mansimar will also be joining us. So I appreciate everyone to just open their videos so that we can go ahead.
Guys, this is the moment that matters. If you're in this photo, you were there for 5 hours.
All right. So I will be starting in 3, 2, 1. Say cheese. Again. 3, 2, 1. Perfect. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you again. Thank you all guests. Thank you